Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3761. Today's date is uh December 15, 2025. It's been almost like night at 21:52 p.m. It's 9:52 p.m. By the way, let me tell you the weather. Weather is almost like 18 degrees Celsius. Okay, yeah. But right now I'm kind of like living in little bit of kind of like a dense forest area, not forest area but dense lush green area where kind of like a somebody uh, cold is became even more colder. Right now I'm actually feeling maybe kind of like a 15 to 14 degrees Celsius somehow. Okay, yeah, it's feel little bit of cold, but I'm still like kind of like a somebody, I'm walking at the rooftop. Okay, yeah, so it's good. All right, yeah, whatever, let's just jump into the question. All right, yeah. Okay, the question is, what if superpower comes with a quirky side effect? Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and information and experience that I've been through. And while I was doing it, that while I was kind of like giving the answer or utilizing my knowledge and things like that, it felt good. It felt nice. Okay, disclaimer. The information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Alright, now regarding about the question says that what if superpower comes with a quirky side effect? Now what exactly is this thing? What exactly is this question? The question is that what if you are kind of like you have a superpower, but it comes with a kind of like a side effect, a quirky side effect. Now, a quirky means kind of like something that very difficult to imagine. So let me help you to little bit something kind of like something quirky means what. Okay, yeah. So imagine you have a power. So you have power that you can run really fast. Oh yeah, you can run really fast, like you can run like a speed of sound or more than sound. Like basically you are kind of like a running equivalent to a flash. Okay, like let's just imagine you are a flash. Okay, yeah, you are a flash. But there is a only side effect that you have is that after you use your power, you are actually farting, and you are actually fart very like a very the you are kind of like a farting very too much, and very the smell is so stinky. Yeah. So imagine that you are a flash, and there is a someone who is kind of like a walking on the road, and you see there is a kind of like a truck who is kind of like a behind that particular person. So you can able to be kind of like a save that particular person, but after you save that particular person, you cannot able to hug them, or you cannot able to kind of like a somebody, yeah, because you have to be fart, and you when you will gonna fart, that particular person might gonna stink. Okay, in this particular context, you might be kind of like a save that particular person as fast as you can, then you kind of like a somebody move away somewhere else so that you could kind of like a fart. Probably this might be a kind of like a little bit funny, quirky, yeah, but yeah, it's kind of like it's only a little bit of fun, probably. So what do you think? Do you have kind of like a superpower that kind of like a quirky side effect? Well, probably what I'm trying to wait, let me understand what exactly. What if superpower? Yeah. So imagine this particular scenario, that what if a kind of like a superpower has a kind of like a quirky side effect. Well, I kind of like a mention regarding about the quirky side effects. Okay, yeah. These are kind of like only fun to describe and things and that and that. But in reality, okay, yeah, we have like what I'm thinking about kind of like a superhero and things like that. Okay, yeah. Let me give you an example. I'm not really sure what exactly example is this thing, but okay, let me give you perspective. Okay, yeah. Have you play Batman Arkham Knight? if you didn't really play, you might gonna hurt that game. Batman Arkham Knight is a game, video game, by the way. Okay, yeah. There are multiples of video game available regarding about Batman. Okay, Arkham Knight, a lot of games. Okay, yeah, I don't know that much, but there are a lot of games are available for Batman. Also, a lot of movies are actually released on Batman too. Okay, yeah, Dark Knight Rises, Batman Begin. Okay, yeah, uh, Christopher Nolan Batman. Okay, there are multiples of Batman variation too. Justice League Batman. There are multiples of Batman too. There are multiples of web series also available too regarding about Batman. Okay, yeah. Now, now let's compare to the Superman. Okay, Superman is also superhero. Okay, yeah. How many games are actually available regarding about Superman? You might gonna found maybe one or two, but not more than Batman, because Batman has a really so many games. Okay, yeah. I don't have any kind of like a some number, but probably the game for Superman is kind of like a very less. Obviously, same thing happened with the movies too. There are so many of there are so many of Batman movies, but there are so less of Superman movies too. Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing, there are so less of web series too. Same situation is actually happened. Now, why is that thing? Yeah, like when did kind of like Batman became so stronger than Superman? No, definitely not. Then why does we have kind of like so many games and movie regarding about Batman as compared to Superman? Why are we not have that much kind of like a kind of like some web series things? Why not we have that thing for Superman? Let's just understand, like I'm just kind of like giving you particular example. Now let me explain what exactly is this thing. Let me clarify what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. We are human. Okay, yeah. We are human and we resonate with humans. Okay, yeah. We resonate with humans. Now, what exactly it means? Okay, yeah. It means that like I don't know, it's a very hard to explain, but let me give you the another perspective. I don't know, you might gonna understand this thing or not. Okay, yeah. Have you watched Transformer Dark Side of Moon? Dark Side of Moon? Transformer 3, by the way. I'm not really sure the name of the movie. Transformer 3. Okay, yeah. Like in this Transformer 3, there is a kind of like a somebody robot who converted into the kind of like a giant robots and things like that. Okay, so the trucks who converted into the giant robot, like this kind of like a movie. Transformer. Okay, I'm talking about 3. Okay, Transformer 3. The Dark Side of the Moon, something like that. Okay, yeah. Have you watched this movie? Really good movie. If you didn't watch it, please watch it. Okay, yeah. This movie and basically then after that there is also another movie too. Okay, name name kind of like assembly. Probably is this thing. Transformer movie 5th or 6th part maybe. Okay, yeah. 5th part, probably 5th part. Like in the 5th part they have kind of like a something that key the Optimus Prime became rogue and not rogue, yeah. It's kind of like Optimus Prime is gone and kind of like Earth is kind of like a things and that. I don't know. There might be a kind of like somebody 5th part maybe. Okay, Transformer 5 and Transformer 3 part. Okay, yeah. Okay, if I don't know, that's why kind of like I mentioned that you might gonna understand this thing. Okay, I'm just trying to explain. Okay, I'm not really sure are you resonate with this thing or not, but let me explain my side first. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. In the Transformer 3, okay, yeah, there are so many human roles are actually available in the Transformer 3. Like there is kind of like a lot of problems are actually faced by fighting with this all those kind of like a robots and things and that. In the film, they kind of like represent the struggle for fighting those giant robots and things like that in Transformer 3. Okay, yeah. But in Transformer 5, things are changed. In Transformer 5 is that key the story is actually about the robots. Okay, Autobots and kind of like some Megatron and like good robots and bad robots. Okay, yeah. And they are kind of like a fighting with each other and something like that. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing. I watch both of those movies. Okay, yeah. I resonate with the Transformer 3. I also resonate if I watch this movie today. I also feel like that it was really amazing, good movie. Okay, yeah. But Transformer 5, I don't really resonate that much. Why is that? Because of that, it's a story about that giant robots and things and good robots and bad robots and things and that, which is completely like a very less intervention of human perspective. There are also human. It's not really that they don't really kind of like simply showcase the human kind of like a struggle and things like that. But the problem is that the way that the human struggle showcase in the Transformer 3, it kind of like a very appeal to watch. It kind of like a feel that I'm resonate with that particular process of kind of like assembly the war and things and try to prevent that stuff and stuff like that. The things actually happen in Transformer 3. But in Transformer 5, I'm not really resonate that much because it kind of like a feel like that alien. I know the stakes was kind of like really high. The entire planet will gonna corrupted and things and that and that. Same thing happened in Transformer 3 and Transformer 5 too. But the problem is that I feel that stake. I feel that kind of like assembly that what kind of like assembly consequences will gonna happen if the bad people will gonna win in Transformer 3. But in Transformer 5, it felt like that a kind of like assembly alien war and things like that, which is yeah, it is like I didn't really resonate that much. It's a kind of like a things that a kind of like a bunch of alien are fighting in a different part of the universe. That why do I care that about? Even if I know and things like that, even if I know that kind of like a war is kind of like a really too much, they are kind of like using such a weapon that kind of like destroy the planet and things and that, but which is actually happen far, far, far away in the universe. Even if I know, I don't really care that much because why would I supposed to be care? It's not even human. It's not even thing. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing. Being human means what now? I resonate with another human. I resonate with a kind of like a what kind of like a other human kind of like a being kind of like a problem and what kind of like a human solve the problem and things like that. I'm resonate with that particular process. Okay, yeah. If kind of like a showcase to me a alien thing, I don't really resonate that much. Now, same thing happened with the Superman and Batman too. Okay, now Superman is an alien. Okay, yeah. But what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. I don't really kind of like a not connect because of Superman is an alien. No, not really at all. But I don't really connect with the Superman is because of that. Superman doesn't really have any flaws. Like Superman is a Superman. Like what kind of like a challenge that you could kind of like a provide to the Superman? Nothing really at all. Like when the Justice League is actually happened and when Superman actually showcase, entire shift is actually changed. Like every superhero are kind of like struggling to fight that particular villain. But when the Superman came, he just like snap it out finger and just fuck it off, dude. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is. This is what kind of like a Superman means. A kind of like somebody strong and super and things like that. And that is what kind of like a challenge it came. That how do you supposed to be showcase a Superman that he kind of like facing a challenge, because there is no challenge at all because he's a super in everything. Okay, and that's what kind of like a Superman is kind of like a very hard to kind of like a show them a challenge. So that's why a kind of like a something that Superman is not meant to be kind of like a showcase. Like basically this thing, it has a kind of like a very less kind of like a possible chances that it kind of like a showcase some sort of problems and things like that, because some of the problems that Superman might gonna solve is kind of like a galactic or universal level of problem, and that's it. In the planet level, he might be kind of like something, just say, he's just like a chiller problem. How do I supposed to intervene and things like that? So this is what kind of like a Superman legacy. This is what kind of like a not legacy. Superman kind of like somebody power, because of Superman is kind of like a so powerful. Okay, yeah. That's why a producer or kind of like a people who kind of like a create a movies or games regarding about Superman, they are bitterly confused at how do I supposed to kind of like a give them a challenge to Superman. But instead of Batman is a very different thing. Batman is a human. He just rich as kind of like a person, but he is a human. He doesn't really have any superpower and things like that. And when he kind of like a simply human, then it has multiple challenges. Political challenges, government challenges, mafia challenges. Lot of you can give you multiple challenges to the Batman, and Batman can solve this thing with very creative liberty. Like when you are kind of like make the character a little bit vulnerable regarding about the kind of like a power and things like that, then particular that character, like as a creator, has a lot of kind of like assembly creative field to kind of like assembly showcase that Batman in such a way that kind of like assembly he will lose at first, then he will kind of like a win at last. And this is what kind of like a Batman is this. This is what kind of like a Batman kind of like assembly really easy to create, really kind of like a easy to give them a kind of like assembly a character which kind of like assembly really like not really that badass kind of like equivalent to the level of Superman, but kind of like assembly is using such a kind of like a villain that kind of like assembly, like as a creator would kind of like assembly have a lot of kind of like assembly a lot of kind of like assembly that challenges that you could create to kind of like a face for the Batman and things like that. And that's why there are so many games and so many kind of like assembly movies are kind of like assembly represent to a Batman. Because yeah, Batman is a kind of like a things that kind of like face all those challenge and things and that and that. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that he probably is this thing. The question is actually that okay, what if a superhuman or superhero comes with a kind of like a quirky side effects? Probably is this thing. This is all we are. Okay, yeah, like basically we all are superhero and we all are kind of like comes with a quirky side effects too. Okay, yeah, like what exactly is this thing? What kind of like assembly the real probably example is this thing? Okay, let me give you the perspective. Wait, it's really fucking cold. Let me. Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let me tell you the perspective. Okay, yeah. So, are humans are superpower or superhuman or superhero? No, we don't really have superpower. So we are not considered to be consider ourselves as a superhuman or superhero. We shouldn't supposed to be called ourselves. No, we cannot able to be that. So are we not superhero? Well, probably is this thing now that's the kind of like something the definition is very much fragile in itself. Okay, yeah. Because in the most of the society, superhero actually considered as a kind of like somebody, a hero has a kind of like a particular power. Or maybe a person could have particular power. Now, power regarding about what? A power regarding about he could supposed to be run faster, fly, he could shoot laser through eyes, he could do like a kind of like a such a thing that human cannot able to be do. Okay, yeah, that is called kind of like a superpower or superhuman or superhero. Okay, so this is what kind of like a definition that we have. Okay, also, things are not done here. Okay, those superpower should supposed to be visible. Okay, should supposed to be visible. What do you mean by that? Means by that he a kind of like a somebody a superhero that you are kind of like a seeing are a visible superhero. Now, what's a visible superhero? A superhero is a kind of like a, let's just say, Superman. You could see him, yes, I could see him. A Batman, you could see him, yes, we could see him. Like every superhero is a visible superhero, na? Right? Yeah, there is no invisible superhero, right? That is wrong. That is definitely wrong. Okay, yeah. This is where like, people don't really understand. People usually praise for visible superhero, a kind of like a person who kind of like a wearing underwear out of his costume. I don't know why does they do that, but yeah, like basically is this thing we are actually kind of like a very praise to such a people who are kind of like somebody a power that we could supposed to be showcased or power that we could supposed to be kind of like shown to the people and things like that. And we are kind of like a praise to that people, not only the superhero but as well as in the real life too. Like basically is this thing that he a Jesus or a kind of like a Prophet Muhammad or like multiples of kind of like somebody Gautam Buddha or multiple things. Okay, yeah. Now, are those kind of like somebody the religious leader are kind of like somebody a superhero? No, they are not. Okay, yeah. So are those invisible superhero? No, they are not either. Then why did you mention those people? No, okay, I'm not really mentioned like, okay, yeah, let me give you the perspective. Let me tell you the perspective. Okay, yeah. These people are kind of like a tell us that what kind of like a way to kind of like a make our humans life much more better in multiple point of perspective. Jesus kind of like a tell the different way, Prophet Muhammad kind of like a tell the different way, Gautam Buddha kind of like a tell in different way. In Hindu mythology there are kind of like millions of god. I'm not really sure what should I supposed to put the name. Okay, yeah. So there are every gods are kind of like a tell a particular way and things like that. Okay, yeah. And this is kind of like a something this like a they kind of like a teach them regarding about how to be kind of like a make our life become better. Okay, yeah. So they kind of like a somebody showcase their power. Okay, yeah. But we don't really consider a power, or maybe at that time the people who are available at that time, they don't really consider those are kind of like consider power. Why not? Because it's a kind of like a somebody very common thing. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing na ki when the person who kind of like a telling something that ki this is a kind of like a right way, at that period of time people might not understand, or people might not kind of like a think that ki that is kind of like a true. And why is that? Because of that ki that particular person is kind of like a exist, and the difference between that particular person and you is kind of like a somewhat something similar. So people might not kind of like a consider them that's a kind of like a power. Now what is exactly power? Okay, what exactly is this thing? A power means like that how much power I hold and how much power you hold has a kind of like a variation. Okay, example is this thing. I can shoot laser from my eyes. So this is a kind of like a somebody visible superhero, as well as kind of like a visible power. And as also while I was doing it, that there is a kind of like a destruction happened because I shoot the laser from my eyes, right? So basically I do have a power, and if you cannot do this thing, that means you cannot have that power. Okay, yeah. So when you not have that power, probably you would kind of like a praise me because of I have that particular power. Okay, yeah. Now this is called kind of like assembly a visible power. Like that's why most of the kind of like assembly humans are kind of like a praise for visible thing. Okay, yeah. Now invisible things means like those are kind of like a people that I mentioned: Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, Gautam Buddha, and Hindu mythology people and things like that. Those are kind of like a gives them a kind of like a lesson. Okay, and those lesson are not visible. It is visible for those people who are kind of like a believe in that particular process, and they would follow that particular process, and they would kind of like enlighten them. Okay, they would kind of like enlighten that ki, oh, this is a kind of like a way that makes our life kind of like a little bit better and things and that and that. And since then those kind of like assembly the thought process, or kind of like the thoughts they kind of like mention on that period of time, people might not kind of like consider them that much important. But after they die, and after the hundreds of years they are kind of like a die, and then after that people realize that no, the person who kind of like somebody died 200 years ago, he kind of like mentioned something, and that kind of like things are really amazing and really great and really good. So that's why we should supposed to praise him. Now that thought process became power. Okay, yeah, that thought will become power, because as I mentioned is this thing, visible power. Okay, yeah, because like after 200 year, it kind of like a show them a little bit changes in the society or things and that and that, and that changes kind of like considered as a visible power. Okay, get it? So that's what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that people usually praise a visible power or visible superhero. Okay, yeah. Now I'm trying to mention invisible superhero. So who are those invisible superhero? Invisible superhero is your father, is the people who are kind of like somebody doing your things every day, kind of like a work and things like that. Those are invisible superhero too. As well as the Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, and kind of like a Gautam Buddha, those are also invisible superhero at that time. Right now they are kind of like a visible superhero, but when they kind of like a born, when they're kind of like a telling all those kind of like assembly things that kind of like a change the life and things like that, at that time those are people are invisible superhero. Okay, people don't really realize that what kind of like a power that they are holding, or what kind of like so many things and that and that. I don't know, sometimes I just kind of like a talk something that it's completely irrelevant to a question and things like that. But I realize, okay, like I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing. I kind of like somebody experiencing this thing throughout my entire life, and kind of like somebody try to understand how these things are kind of like a change and things like that. Let me tell you one thing, we are humans, and probably is this thing, we are not holding that much kind of like a power. Even if we are say we are kind of like so much powerful, equivalent to the power of Jesus, equivalent to power of Prophet Muhammad, equivalent to the kind of like something the Gautam Buddha, equivalent to the power of all the Hindu mythology, we equivalent to the power of all of them. Probably is this thing, if we want, we could be that particular person. Okay, yeah. And if we don't want, then you are not nothing. Okay, yeah. So what exactly is this thing? Does superhero comes with a side effect? Yes, it is. because there is no kind of like a simply beauty thing happened after you, like the creation of better thing is kind of like comes from flaws and things like that. Like, okay, when you draw a painting, okay, yeah, you cannot able to be draw kind of like a Leonardo level of painting, like a like you cannot able to draw like that. No, you have to be kind of like a draw millions of painting. You have to kind of like a mix thousands of sorry you have to kind of like a mix thousands of painting, and you have to make millions of mistakes and things and that, and then you kind of like actually figure it out mistake, kind of like a find out that, oh, this is a kind of like a mistake, I should supposed to solve that thing, and then you solve that mistake, and you kind of like a make sure you are kind of like a became better than yesterday. And when you do that thing, you became a kind of like a painter equivalent to a Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: the world that we are living is a kind of like a simply the failure of all those peoples and things like that, because we are human and we are learn from our mistakes and things like that. Look at around yourself, dude. Look at around yourself. Everything that you are kind of like seeing, a building, a car, or any electrical equipment, that are comes from the failure, that are comes from the flaws, that are comes from kind of like simply the side effects and things and that, and which are meant to be good, which are meant to be right, which are meant to be kind of like simply a perfect recipe for kind of like a become a better person in every single day. Let me tell you one thing: we are in this journey, we are not kind of like simply became successful or things like that. Like basically it's this thing: if you are kind of like simply born at rich person, you have everything, you have kind of like a money and things and that, you should supposed to be consider yourself as a kind of like a simply very successful person, but that is not. We are in this journey, we are like you and me, we are all are in this journey, and we are kind of like a try to kind of like a suppress our kind of like a something kind of like a mistakes, or kind of like a something that key, what is exactly what they mention, they mention that a side effects and things, and kind of like a make that kind of like a side effect to kind of like a better world or better became or things or that, I don't know. So this is my opinion regarding about this question. Okay, yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of like a talk something like a really shit ass person, like things like that. Okay. Also, I mentioned couple of people name. Okay, yeah. And like basically this thing that Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, and Gautam Buddha, I kind of like a mention their name. And if some people are kind of like literally hurtful regarding about if I'm saying this name, am I should supposed to say sorry? Yeah, probably I should supposed to say sorry. Okay, why? Why do you say so sorry? Like it's not really that you kind of like a betrayal, you kind of like a somebody that you kind of like said something wrong to them. No, nothing at all. Like basically you could say Jesus, you could say Gautam Buddha, but you cannot able to say Prophet Muhammad. Okay, yeah. Or maybe you cannot able to withdraw Prophet Muhammad, things like that. Why? Because in Islam religious, Prophet Muhammad or Paigambar Muhammad, okay, yeah, is not meant to be a kind of like a somebody person that you should supposed to be say a name, or kind of like a somebody draw a painting or things like that, because this personality is kind of like something much bigger than humanity thought process and things like that. So you cannot able to say his name, or you cannot able to kind of like somebody draw the painting and things like that. Probably this is what I kind of like heard about. Okay, regarding about that, might be I'm kind of like completely wrong. I'm saying kind of like a really much apologize to the people if I'm kind of like hurting. I'm sorry, I'm not belong to the Islam community probably, but I don't know. I'm deeply apologize. Okay, yeah, for that particular person. Okay, if I kind of like said something, I'm deeply apologize. All right, this is it, and thank you.